Evening and welcome to tonight's show. My name is Jeff. I don't know why I'm introducing you. I'm I don't know why I'm introducing myself to you. Why do I always go blank when the show starts? Why can't I just go into it? Ho, hoo-ah, hoo-ah. We're talking Ramones tonight. It's been a while since we've had a good Ramones show. And it's funny. The Ramones are one of those bands that they were, from the beginning, some of the forebearers of punk rock, of the modern incarnation of what we understand of punk rock, the Johnny Appleseeds of punk rock, if you will, traveling from town to town, and wherever they stopped, bands would sprout up and they'd leave a trail of punk bands in their wake. The Ramones did. The Ramones are an incredibly important band. You know, it's funny when you think about the influence and impact that the Ramones have had on alternative music. I would say that it rivals the Beatles, right? Like on many different levels. Maybe some Beatles purists would tell me to bite my tongue, but if you really look, if you look at the trail, if you look at the fossil record of the last few decades of music, you can see how it all traces back. This incredibly important band that goes toe to toe with a band like the Beatles in this kind of way. Never had a number one hit. Beatles, they had 20 number one hits, right? 21 now, actually. I believe Now and Then makes their 21st number one hit, right? Something like that. Ramones never got number one hit. They always wanted a number one hit. They were optimistic. They hoped. So, after End of the Century is when the band kind of resigned themselves to their sort of fate of like who and what they were, and just like, okay, this is the deal. Let's hop in the van. Johnny's concerned. Johnny's own words. Johnny was like, I just want to make $1 million and then I'm going to retire, which is what a weird goal. Joey, however, Joey was internally out by all accounts. Joey was eternally optimistic that someday the Ramones would get a hit, that they would break out. They even had a song called "We Want the Airwaves." They wanted the airwaves, man. That is an incredible. Bud Hall here. Bud Hall says Slug is the best Ramones song, probably. That is, oof. I was going to say Go Little Camaro Go, a personal favorite of mine. Or Baba, ooh, meow, meow. I love that song. featuring vocals by Debbie Harry, of all people. Hey, Angus, how are you? Hey, ho, let's go. So while the Ramones never ended up getting that number one hit, they did come very close. The closest they came, in fact, the closest they came is the subject of tonight's show, Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is the closest the Ramones ever came to surfing the airwaves in the way that they really truly wanted. They charted with that song. I think I Want to Be Sedated charted as well, but it was later. I'm going to check that right now. Did I Want to Be Sedated ever chart? Let's see what that brings up. Okay, so the highest charting Ramones album was End of the Century. The Ramones ever have a top 10 hit? No. Okay, so interesting. They did not mention I Want to Be Sedated. I always thought that I Want to Be Sedated did chart at some point. I guess it never did. I know it definitely didn't chart during Road to Ruin, but I mean later on, I feel like that song had a resurgence, so much so that they did the video for it. So in any case, what I was going to say before I interrupted myself, they came close with Poison Heart as well, which was written by Dee Dee and given to the band. The band recorded it in 1992. And in fact, it's also featured on a Pet Sematary movie soundtrack, just like Pet Sematary is. But that would be Pet Sematary 2. Pet Sematary 2, the closing credit song is Poison Heart. For the movie Pet Sematary, however, the song Pet Sematary plays in the closing credits, as we will discuss in a moment. Point being is the closest the Ramones ever came to a hit was Pet Sematary. And it's absolutely insane to me that Pet Sematary was not a number one hit, right? Like, how on earth did that song not make it? With you think about all the number one hits in the 80s, and a song like Pet Sematary, even like Howlin' at the Moon, Sha Na Na from what was it? Too Tough to Die in 85. That song didn't chart either. I mean, the Ramones, maybe maybe there was a curse or something. It's weird how a band so influential could be cursed to never receive what they always wanted. Um, but at the end of the day, they did come close, and that's what we're gonna talk about. Now, like anything we do on the channel, we gotta be thorough here, and we gotta we're gonna go through different layers, just in the way like the layers of a cemetery grave. We're gonna sift through the sediment and get down to the core that is the truth about Pet Sematary. So this is from the American Songwriter. Great website. This is a great website right here. I like reading them from time to time. This is the first thing we're going to look at. This is by Tina Benitez Eves, and it was published 16 days ago. The story behind the Stephen King commissioned Ramones hit Pet Sematary. Now, usually when we talk about this, it's always at there's kind of a legend behind this, that Stephen King met up with the Ramones and Dee Dee was inspired. And we've talked about it on the channel, and he wrote the song in an hour. That Dee Dee was that good. The title of this article claims that it was commissioned by Stephen King, which is a detail that maybe I had read that. I don't remember that ever being a part of the story, but nonetheless, author Stephen King was a big fan of the Ramones, this we know, and invited the band to his home in Bangor, Maine, prior to making the film adaptation of his best-selling 1983 horror novel, Pet Sematary. At one point during their meeting, King handed bassist Dee Dee Ramone a copy of the book. Dee Dee retreated to King's basement and had the lyrics to Pet Sematary ready approximately an hour later. That's the legend. It's like, what an amazing story. And the idea that, like, Dee Dee was kind of a savant, right? Like, that he was just able to be so gifted with songwriting and just churn something out like that. It's kind of surprising that Dee Dee was just never, I guess he was actually, after he left the Ramones. He continued to write for the Ramones. So he was a songwriter. Pet Sematary was released on the Ramones' 11th album, Brain Drain, and was also used in the 1989 film based on King's iconic book. Great movie. I mean, it's a classic. It's a classic movie. Everybody knows it. I always enjoyed Pet Sematary. However, I always found that Pet Sematary 2 is the superior film out of the two. And out of all the films that have come to be, we have 4 Pet Sematary movies. You got the remake, you got like the prequel to the remake, and you got the original and the sequel. I think Pet Sematary. So sorry. I'm still getting over this, this phlegm, this in my throat. It's the worst. I don't have any tea, so I apologize for everybody who had to hear that. What was I saying? Oh, Pet Sematary 2 is the best one, in my opinion. I love Pet Sematary 2. I think it's the best out of all 4 of those movies that have come out. Here's something that's interesting, though. And, Daniel Ray from the hardcore band Shrapnel, and he would go on to work with the Misfits and co-write a bunch of those Misfits 95 songs with the band. He was the co-writer along with Dee Dee. So co-written by the band's longtime producer, Daniel Ray, who helped flesh out the song Pet Sematary. It was also co-produced by Jean Beauvoir of the Plasmatics. Super interesting. The meaning. The film and the book follows the story of the Creed family who moved from Chicago to the rural town of Ludlow, Maine, and have to survive a legion of pets that have returned from the dead, which is not really, I mean, whoever wrote that did not like do a great job, because that is not what that is really not what the book is about at all. There's only one dead pet that returns, you know. Um, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. The Ramones, that's not very accurate. The Ramones Pet Cemetery is a free for all of ghosts, ancient goblins, and warlords. It's not. It's just those are just like two of the lyrics, you know. The lyrics are also reference King's Pet Cemetery character Victor Pascow, a university student who died in a fatal car crash, and visits Louis Creed to warn him of the haunted burial site. One of the scariest elements in the original film. Follow Victor to the sacred place. This ain't a dream I can't escape. Molars fangs, the clicking of bones, spirits moaning among the tombstones. It's so great, man. It's so the lyrics are fantastic. And the night when the moon is bright, something cries, something ain't right. I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. I don't want to live my life again. What a line. What a friggin' line. And especially considering what Dee Dee's life was. What was Dee Dee's life like at that time? Dee Dee was, you know, he was in this weird, overly medicated, you know, he was on a lot of psychiatric medications. He was sober. He felt confined by the Ramones. He wanted to be a hip hop star. We talked about that in a previous episode. And yet here he is writing some of his best work. It's true what they say about pathos, right? Pathos leads to great art. The chorus is a plea against any form of reincarnation, of course, burial at a pet cemetery. I think that the latter is really not important. It's more about the incarnation. I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. I don't want to live my life again. The album cover for Brain Drain is a weird one, right? Like when you look at all of the Ramones album covers before Brain Drain and after Brain Drain, it really kind of maybe it kind of accurately represents what's going on with Dee Dee at this time, because he leaves the Ramones right after this album, like right after. I mean, it really is. It's kind of like it's a bleak album cover. The video, here's something interesting about the video. The video, directed by Bill Fishman, who also helmed the band's time-lapse video for I Want to Be Sedated. The visuals around Pet Sematary were actually set in a gravesite. Okay, so I guess the I Want to Be Sedated video, because Dee Dee's in that one, right? So that would mean that it was made in the late 80s. Maybe it was made around this time. I don't know. Let me see here. Filmed at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. So here's something that's cool. It's filmed at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, which is very close it's right around this area, and it's also where I shot the opening of my film. And you know, it's funny, I had no idea that it was the filming site for the Ramones music video at the time. So it was filmed at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Sleepy Hollow, New York. The video shows the Ramones walking through the grounds in black and white, along with color footage of the band performing while slowly being lowered into the grave. I would play the video, but it will probably get tagged, so I'm not going to. But the video has a ton of cameos in it. You have Debbie Harry from Blondie, Chris Stein, you have Cheetah Chrome from the Dead Boys, and more friends. You have Andy Chernoff from the Dictators, who's been on the channel. We interviewed Andy. I think the guys from Rancid also make an appearance. You also have Dave Vanian and his wife, Dave Vanian from The Damned. So a lot of really cool people show up. Everyone drove up to the cemetery in the middle of a freezing cold night to shoot the video, which turned into a big party in a cemetery. I would have loved to have seen that. Frankly, I was there. I was just too young. I was down the road and I was too young to enjoy it. It was fun, said Ray, who also has a cameo wearing an Abraham Lincoln hat and white medical trench coat. I would love to get Daniel Ray on the show. I really feel like it's possible, and that's something that I really need to check out, need to do. Um, I think they just decided to have a party and invite their friends because everyone likes scary monster stuff. It was like Halloween, but it wasn't Halloween. That's great. The hit. So here's what's interesting. Pet Cemetery became the band's highest charted hit, and it peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Modern Rock charts. So how about that? So, it's interesting. They did finally chart, but it took years and years and years. And the truth is, the song should have been a number 1. This article makes mention of, during this scene in Pet Cemetery, Sheena is a punk rocker plays out. Along with Pet Cemetery, the Ramones 1977 song, Sheena is a punk rocker also plays in the film. In a scene where a speeding truck driver who's about to hit a small child is distracted by singing along to it as he drives. So it actually can be partially to blame for the tragic death of young Gage in in Pet Cemetery. Marky in, Dee Dee out. Pet Cemetery and the release of Brain Drain also marked the end of an era and the continuation of another for the band. Former drummer Marky, who was asked to leave the band in 1983 because of his drinking problem, returned to the Ramones and remained with them until they disbanded in 1996. So when Marky left, they had Elvis Ramone, aka Clem Burke from Blondie. He filled in. He wasn't a good fit. And then they got what's his face? Richie Ramone, who's by all means considered to be the fastest Ramone drummer and somewhat of a songwriter. Unlike, Tommy was a songwriter too. Marky, not so much. Marky to a lesser extent. But CJ wanted to be like cut in on the t-shirt money, and that was a whole thing. That was a whole big thing, and a big point of contention. And I'm sure maybe there were other factors that eventually culminated with him leaving the band. And when that happened, that Marky came back. Marky's now sober, and he's back in the band. So the classic lineup after the Road to Ruin lineup after Tommy, that's the original lineup. I say the classic lineup has Marky in it, right? They're together for one more album, and then Dee Dee would exit. Shortly after the release of Brain Drain in 1989, Dee Dee also left the band and was replaced by CJ Ramone. The Pet Cemetery video was the final one for Dee Dee. The final one that Dee Dee would appear in with the band before his death in 2002. Although he's in a few things. He's in a few Ramones related things after that. Dee Dee would eventually come back for the final show in 1996, which was filmed We're Out of Here Live, and he does a song with the band. It's a great music video, and it really sort of, this along with the Sedated video and Rock and Roll High School, you really get a sense of like, the Ramones, in addition to their music, they really did have like sort of like a there was a lot of visual imagery that was tied to the band, and I really feel like you see that at the forefront in all of their music videos. You really see a side of their personality that maybe isn't entirely. The music is very visual. It's very visual music. It's very easy to imagine the imagery in the music. But, I feel like this added a whole, these videos, they add a whole other element. That's why you do music videos, right? To an extent. So that's like the surface history, right? That's like what we know on the surface about the history. But it's a little bit stickier than that. It's a little bit stickier. And you know what else is sticky? Riot stickers, the sponsor of the Frumess channel. That's right. Get your Riot stickers. We have a special deal going with riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's FRUMESS, where you can get 1,000 stickers for $79. That's right. What a deal. 1,000 stickers for $79. You really, really cannot beat that. These are 3-inch by 3-inch stickers. They have they're printed on vinyl, which makes them waterproof. They have a UV coating, which really protects them from the sun. And you can get 1,000 of them for $79 with that special deal. You're not going to find that deal anywhere else but riotstickers.com/Frumess. If you need stickers, you know where to go. riotmothereffingstickers.com/Frumess. Let's play the Less Than Jake themed song before we continue on to learn the secret history underneath the history of Pet Sematary. Dun dun dun.
We make stickers, banners, and buttons too, posters and promo cards. There's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. RiotStickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
All right, and we're back, and I just want to give a shout out to Angus McCorder, who is awesome. Angus, we salute you. Thank you for being you. We appreciate you and all that you do. So thank you, Angus. All right, so now it's time for us to take a look at the history underneath the history, because this is not where it all ends. This is not where it all ends. We are now going to look at the confusing history of the Ramones horror song, Pet Sematary. Let's find it, shall we? Here it is. All right. This is by Martin Keltley, and it's published on March 29th, 2019. If horror movie fans stuck around to the end of the 1989 movie Pet Sematary, they heard the Ramones song of the same name as the credits rolled. Some fans of Stephen King, whose same titled book inspired the film, didn't enjoy its leap to the big screen. Others loved the results. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's definitely it's a cult classic, but it's, you know, it does have a mixed kind of reception. There are some people out there who feel that it's not because it's not very faithful to the book, the source material, that it just doesn't work as a movie. I'm not one of those people, but they do exist. The Ramones song seemed to fare similarly. I disagree with. While Pet Sematary is one of the biggest hits and secured them more TV time than almost anything else they ever did, it was also nominated for a Razzle Award for the worst original song of the year. I did not know that, but you know, Razzies, I think it said Razzle. Razzies suck, dude. Who cares about Razzies? Oh, I used the S word. If audience response was a little confusing, so too is the story behind the song. Now, this part's really interesting because I did not know. I didn't think I ever heard this before either. I always took the legend at face value, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. What's certain is that King was a massive Ramones fan. This we know. He even mentioned the band in the book. What's also certain is that the two parties met at some point, but details behind the history of the song's ties to King and the book seem to have been lost along the way. In his 2014, I've read this book, and it's a great read. Marky's book, Punk Rock Blitzkrieg, My Life as a Ramone. In his 2014 book, drummer Marky Ramone clearly recalled having dinner in the basement of King's home in Bangor, Maine in 1982, after the author had booked the band to play in association with the radio station that he owned. So this is interesting. So it's not when the movie is being filmed, it's several years earlier before the book has even come out. During the evening, Marky wrote that King handed Dee Dee Ramone a copy of his best-selling novel, Pet Sematary. It was the same night, Marky said, that Dee Dee announced his intention to leave the band. All right, now he's saying this happened all the way back in 1982, but the book didn't come out until 83, and the movie didn't start filming until 88, and that's when Dee Dee was wanting to leave the band. So I don't think Dee Dee wanted to leave the band as early as 82. Maybe he did emotionally, but I don't think he ever made it verbally known that as early as that. So I believe this has to be a typo. 1982 can't be 1982. Maybe it's 1988. Maybe it's 1989. I don't know. Stephen King calls that version of events bullshit. Soon after the book's release, we didn't eat at my house, he told Rolling Stone. They never even came to the house. We ate at Miller's Restaurant, the only fancy restaurant in Bangor. I don't remember if we even talked about Pet Sematary. I might have said something about a song. What I remember is that Marky was the only one who was articulate. The other ones really weren't. So imagine Stephen King sitting with the Ramones at a restaurant, at a fancy restaurant, and Dee Dee, Johnny, and Joey aren't really articulate, but Marky is. That's amazing. King later said of Marky's account, I said to my publisher, this story about them coming to my house is total bullshit. But I also said, don't change a fucking word. It's like James Stewart in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. When the truth and legend are in opposition, print the legend. I love that. And I think to an extent too, a lot of the Misfits lore that we cover here on the show, I'm sure that the legend is printed maybe more than say the truth, but that's what makes it so great. That's why we love it. So I'm in full alignment with that. So I love that King is like, this isn't what really happened, but it's also a great story. So let's just say it happened. So fine, I'm all about that. Stephen King makes me love Stephen King that much more, and I love Stephen King. King. It's also worth noting that Pet Sematary. It's also worth noting that Pet Sematary was published the year after the meeting took place. All right, so that's really weird. So that 1982 was not supposed to be a typo, though it's not impossible that copies already existed. Also, Marky was fired from the band in 1982 as a result of his addiction issues. So this is weird, man. I don't think it couldn't have been in 82. It had to have been later. It couldn't have been so early. The movie. So what? They wrote the song Pet Sematary, or a song was written for Pet Sematary that early, and they just sat on it until the movie came out. I don't know. I find that hard to believe. The only person who could really clarify it now, assuming that you trust what he says, would be, based on his exaggerated account in his book, would be Marky. Although, listen, if you're writing a book and you're trying to sell books, like you're going to write, of course you would write that story. I don't fault Marky for doing that. You could ask Marky, you could ask Daniel Ray, you could ask Stephen King, I guess. The movie in its 2019 remake follows the story of the Creed. So this was tied in with the remake that came out, which I guess was a little bit more faithful to the book in certain aspects than deviated in other ones. I thought it was a mixed bag. Had some good stuff in it, some interesting scenes. I think the prequel was better. Thank you, Angus. No, Angus, thank you. But knew what I need to do. Thank you. Ask Monty. I should have, because Monty has been on the channel. Monty was on the show. If you go back some ways, about 3 years ago, we had Monty on Pizza Punk. This was not something I asked him, but Monty would also be the person to know. Maybe we'll have to have Monty back on. Appears in connection with an old burial ground that has the power to blah, 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 blah. The song appeared on the Ramones' 1989 album Brain Drain. We know this. And continuing the horror theme, its video was set in the graveyard, featuring all the cameo appearances we made. It really is one of the, not just the best Ramones video, but like just one of the best videos from the 80s period. It's freaking great. By that time, Marky was back in the band, but the video ended up being Dee Dee's last appearance. We know this. In an interview shot during the making of the video, he said, it's good that after 15 years, the Ramones are still together, still friends, and still happening. And I think we're doing better than ever. It's so weird. You know, the Ramones were only around for 22 years, and you know, they cover such like a cross section of popular music from the 70s to the 90s, right? Like they started in 74, they finished in 96, and they were together for the decade of the 80s. I mean, they really weren't together that long. And yet, for some reason, that 22 years, maybe it's because they played so many shows, that 22 years feels like 50 years or something. I mean, the Grateful Dead were together for 30 years. People were like, whoa, what a long, strange trip it's been, man. It's like, meanwhile, you have other bands that have been together for fucking 50 years. Like, how is it that Kiss is ending 50 years of Kiss, man? Only 22 years of the Ramones. They've been around twice as long as the Ramones have. That is strange to me. Here's the making of Pet Sematary. I wonder if we can get away with this. Let's see.
For the new music news. Picture this as an MTV contest for the future. You win the graveyard where the Ramones are buried. Or better still, you win the graveyard where the Ramones are buried alive! Here's more.
Why were the Ramones getting lowered into a grave? Well, because horror novelist Stephen King wanted
Oh,
it that
crap,
way.
that's
Well,
the song.
sort of. You see, the Ramones
That's
were shooting
annoying.
the video for Pet Sematary. Their title song.
Well, at least it has some background music. That's cool. You know, it's funny. I've never been able to figure out exactly where it was, where this was shot, because I've been up there. I mean, I've been up there many times, and I couldn't tell you. Oh, here we go.
To a hotel under the surname of D.
Oh, wait, let's get to
The
the.
character checks into a hotel under the surname of Dee Ramone, right? And then he turns on the radio and they're playing Rockaway Beach. And before he buries somebody, he goes.
In a pickup truck too.
You can't say, "Hello, let's go," before they bury people.
Where's my lady with the dog? Look somber. Look down at the grave.
So great. I love this.
Plot here.
What's the plot?
Okay, if plot details are too much to
There's
ask,
Dave
well, then
Vanian.
who are all these people? We're coming up from hell, you know, we're gonna like
She's being
torture
involved.
Wow.
I play the drunk cowboy.
I'm the mortician. I'm going to measure
So
the Ramones.
fun. Oh, that's Daniel Ray.
Their coffin.
That wasn't Dave Vanian.
Maximus Mani Mono Momi Momi Ma.
I'm going to be a normal, sexy housewife dusting a tombstone.
God, it's a great song that I can't play for you right now. Hold on. Let me mute this so you could keep playing. That's awesome. Oh, wait, there's Dee Dee. Let's listen to Dee Dee. Hey, it's me, Dee Dee. Oh, crap.
15 years, the Ramones are still together. Still years, the Ramones are
So he's full of crap because he's about to
working, you
leave.
know, like after 15 years, the Ramones are still together, still friends, and still happening. And I think we're doing better than ever.
And the latest generation of Ramones fans seems to agree.
Wow, I think they're awesome.
That's so awesome.
They're great.
What
I
a
love
fun,
the
what a
song.
And what
fun,
about the new song?
what a
Great,
fun
I love it.
version of that.
But my favorite song's still Rock and Roll High School, since I
Cool.
was young.
Speaking of getting older, it's been
Wow, that is really great. Let's hope we didn't get tagged for that, but that's awesome.
Show
Oh,
up at the video saying, "When can we go home?" Video saying, "When can we?" Guys, they show up saying, "Happy-go-lucky guys."
bit.
Exactly the same. Happy-go-lucky guys. They show up at the video saying, "When can we go home?" Absolutely the same.
kind of sounds like Dee Dee.
Well,
There you go. There you have it. Cool little making of featurette. That's awesome. Despite those words, he later wrote in his 2000 memoir, which is a great read if you've never read it, Lobotomy, Surviving the Ramones, that it was tough recording the Brain Drain album because everyone took their shit out on me. I dreaded being around them. They drove me away. I didn't even end up playing on the album. Everybody in the band had problems, girlfriend problems, money problems, mental problems. Even though it's unclear when he wrote Pet Sematary, it is known that he didn't contribute bass tracks to the recording. Producer Daniel Ray, who got a writing co-credit, played instead. So I didn't know that either. Or maybe I did and I forgot about that as well. So Daniel Ray is playing bass. So I guess Daniel Ray really truly is the fifth Ramone, that he played all the bass for Dee Dee. I mean, listen, Johnny Ramone had no ego about letting Walter Lure or whoever come in and do the guitar solos on the recordings. He did not care. He knew what he could do. He knew he was a great rhythm player, and he knew he could do his buzzsaw, and that was it. Like, he had no qualms about being like, he wanted the record to sound good. He wanted it to sound accurate. Kind of amazing. As you can see here, it has the Ramones albums ranked, and that's going to be we'll do that episode in the future, the Ramones albums ranked, because I would like to take a look and see what is mentioned, what is ranked, if I would agree, or maybe I'll come up with my own ranking. Matt John is here. He says, "Hey Fiends, Pet Sematary was in my open mic repertoire for many years. Anyone who knows Lifestyle the Ramones video?" Right. Yes, I'm familiar with that video. I had the VHS and watched it so much and shared Ramones videos. Pet Sematary actually would be a really good karaoke song. I think that would work really, really well. Now, if you thought we were done here, you would be wrong, because voila, just to be extra thorough, we have this wonderful oral history of the Ramones' Pet Sematary. So this is pretty great. We have everybody speaking that was not in the band, right? And we can't talk to Joey, Johnny, or Dee Dee because they're all gone. However, present here, let's look at this cool graphic of the Ramones. I mean, you can imagine like Scooby-Doo-esque Ramones in some sort of Pet Sematary situation. Would be a lot of fun. This is by Brianna Elric. Not Elric. Ehrlich, I guess. In the introduction to Stephen King's 1978 short story collection, Night Shift, author John D. MacDonald wrote in praise of King. Two of the most difficult areas to write in are humor and the occult. In clumsy hands, the humor turns to dirge and the occult turns funny. Stephen King is not going to restrict himself to his present field of intense interest. Pet Sematary had yet to come out when the expert thriller spinner MacDonald revered King for his ability to weave the dark and the light. That book, which told the tale of a pet cemetery that brought the dead back to life, would become King's self-proclaimed scariest book. I mean, it's a book along with The Shining and Carrie, I'd say, that he's probably most well known for, right? Plus, it would spawn one of the most hilariously creepy punk tracks of all time, the Ramones' Pet Sematary. The punk group wrote that song for the 1989 film by the same name. So, wow. So Daniel Ray also must have made a couple bucks, right? He must have made a couple bucks off being the co-writer of that track as well. Despite its nomination for a 1990 Razzie Award, as we learned tonight, which honored all the schlock that Hollywood had to offer, the deceptively bleak Dee Dee Ramone pen track was a rare top 10 hit for the Ramones at the time, when their trajectory was on the downturn, and a certified horror rock classic that gave the Mary Lambert directed film some much needed levity. Yeah, right. This was the film was directed. Both films were directed by Mary Lambert. There are some women in horror, not too many of them, and Mary Lambert, she definitely would probably be on like the Mount Rushmore of that because of that. In celebration of the song's 30th anniversary and the April 5th release of the horror film remix. This was another tie-in with the remake, that was big news. Like, everybody was very excited when that came out about 4 years ago. Tidal spoke with everyone associated with the Ramones track. How about that? From Mary Lambert to the man who dug the grave in the music video. Mary Lambert, Pet Sematary 1989 director. Dee Dee Ramone was a dear, dear, dear friend of mine, and he was part of the group of people that I am still dear friends with. Stephen King loved the Ramones also. I think he still does. It was something we bonded over when we met for the first time. So I said, look, I bet you anything that Dee Dee will write a song for us. I can't imagine that he won't write a song for the movie. So I called him up the next day and he said, yeah. So that is the Occam's razor. That gets down to the bottom of things. That's how Dee Dee Ramone wasn't in Stephen King's basement and handed a copy of the book and then writing the song. The director, Mary Lambert, she called him up and was like, "Would you write a song?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm sure that's what actually happened." And I'm sure it happened probably, from the sound of it, it happened in 1988, not as early as 82. So again, we've gone through the different layers of history, and that's what's so interesting about sources, right? Like sources and like where stuff comes from, and how you have to critically look at every different piece of the material and like know what is what. So it's Mary Lambert who's responsible, right? Daniel Ray, Ramones producer. At the time, I was working a bit with the Ramones, writing songs and producing. I was working with Dee Dee, and we were sort of writing partners. Remember, Daniel Ray also was helping Dee Dee with his hip hop project, Dee Dee King, which we covered in another video. I think that was a Friday that we got the call that they wanted the Ramones to write Pet Sematary. I guess the film was already shot or something. So the film was already shot. So now we've really clocked when the song was written. Had to have been written in, again, it had to have been written in 88 or 89. That's how we got the go ahead to attempt it. It would be so weird if they attempted to write the song in 82 before it was even a glimmer. Maybe it was optioned back then, but they then started to produce the movie at all. Dee Dee called me and was like, "I'm going to go buy the book." He got the book, and about 5 hours later, he called me. I was out to dinner. I lived in Manhattan and he lived in Queens. He left the lyrics on my phone machine. He was already done. I don't know if he speed read the book or skimmed it. I don't know what he did, but he got the story down, and he got really good imagery for the whole vibe. So that part of the legend is true, that Dee Dee really did speed read the book. So it's like Marky Ramone took elements. He's taking elements of truth and weaving it into a story that sounds way better. The legend sounds better than the truth. But it's Daniel Ray who's bearing witness. We got answers to the questions we're asking. Dee Dee was very impulsive. When he had his mind set on something, it had to be done right then. Also, Dee Dee wanted to get the song written before anyone else tried to write it, the other Ramones. I know Joey probably got the call too, but Joey was much slower in the way that he worked. Dee Dee just had a fire under him. So you have competition as well. There's probably a little bit of, publishing competition there, because early in the Ramones, they split the publishing 4 ways. And I think that changed after a while. That started to change. I transcribed the lyrics and wrote the music that evening. The chorus wrote itself. So the music is really by Daniel Ray and the lyrics are by Dee Dee. The chorus wrote itself. That was very obvious because the Ramones always sing, I don't wanna walk around with you, all that stuff. So it was obvious. I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. And then there's, I don't want to live my life again, which is kind of funny because your life is so miserable. You don't want to live it again, but it's also the premise of the book. It really is. It's a brilliant song. And the story, this is so great. This is perfect. So that night I wrote the music to it and I put Dee Dee's words to the melody. And the next day I played it for him over the phone. Then we made a little demo of it and sent it to the film team, who I guess approved it. Isn't that something, man? I mean, that's a trip right there. Lambert says, the thing that I loved about the Ramones, and especially about Dee Dee, who was my close friend, is that they made it look really simple. It seemed really simple to the point of being stupid music. But how come somebody else can't do it? Why is it so unique? Why is it so timeless? It's because Dee Dee was always right there in the moment. I think that's so true, man. It's often said that there's brilliance in simplicity and there's brilliance in brevity. When things get too complicated, they can get weighed down. Things can get lost. That doesn't mean things that aren't complicated aren't good, but there's something about simplicity. Simplicity can be so much more universal, right? Than say something that's really like complicated and tangled. And that's what makes all of the Ramones songs so great. Beat on the brat, beat on the brat, beat on the brat with a baseball bat. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Hey Daddy-O, I don't want to go down to the base. There's something down there. I don't want to go, hey Romeo, there's something down there, down to the base. Now I want to sniff some glue. Now I want to sniff some glue. All the kids have nothing to do. Now I want to sniff some glue. I mean, it just, fucking love the Ramones, man. I really do. I really, really do. Because if you give that tasks, you say, write about boredom. Write about boredom, okay? Go write a song of being, I'm bored. Iggy Pop did that, actually. I'm bored. He has a song called I'm Bored. But, like, I don't know. You just, you can imagine it just going in so many different ways. But unlike Didi Ramone is just like, now, now I want to snip some glue. Now I want to have something to do. All the kids want to snip some glue. All the kids want something to do. Dun 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 dun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's just fucking brilliant, dude. It's so fucking brilliant. Glad to see it go. Oh, fuck. Everything the Ramones did was great. It really was. If you wanted him to write a song about a pet cemetery, well, that's what he was going to do. It wasn't going to have some weird existential drift. It was going to be, I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. I don't want to live my life again. In these 2 lines, first of all, he tells the entire plot of the movie, which is another thing that's difficult to do if you've ever been to a pitch meeting and tried to pitch a movie in 1 sentence. So on one hand, we lost it. We lost the thing. So on one hand, he gave us the entire plot of the movie. And on the other hand, he made it very personal because Didi had a really tough life. And I could see why he might have not wanted to live it again. He was born in post-war Germany to a mother who was German and a father who was a serviceman. It was really rough. He grew up really rough and not in an especially loving and nurturing environment. This is from Jean Beauvoir, Ramones producer. I had produced the Ramones. I had produced the Ramones before. I had made their record Animal Boy with such tracks as, Eat the Rat. Does Animal Boy have Go Little Camaro Go? Go Little Camaro Go? I think it does. My manager was somewhat involved with the film. He was friends with the director, Mary Lambert, so they asked me to produce the song. I came into the studio, saw what they had, and we pretty much had to start from scratch because producing is also putting the song together, arranging it. So even though the song was written, it was in a pretty raw form. I would love, and I don't know if it exists, I would love to hear what that raw Ramones form was, like that Daniel Ray, Didi Ramone, demo sounded like. Because it sounds like, I feel like that song, Pet Cemetery, has a lot of sort of, it's kind of like it has a new wave element to it, right? Like there's like kind of like a real radio friendly new wave sort of vibe in the same again, to harken back to Howl at the Moon. It's like a similar sort of thing. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like I feel like that probably came from that. So I'd love to hear what the raw original OG sort of stuff sounded like. That would be interesting to me. They wanted something that would have commercial value, which is a little different, which is a little difficult sometimes to get with the Ramones. I would do crazy things like put keyboards on Ramones songs, which was a little strange sometimes. But for this song, it worked. Background vocals too. I mean, for real. And Joey's voice, man. Joey is, I would say this is kind of like the pinnacle of Joey's latter day singing voice, right? Like this is when, Joey's earlier singing voice was more of a croon. He was crooning, and he sort of changed things up as the Ramones continued on. His vocal delivery evolved with it. We did some work on the track, and then we gave it to Joey so that Joey could kind of live with it for a while. He always used to chew on lemons in the studio, and he'd get these really gargling, crazy sounds as he was warming up. People would be looking at him like, what is he doing? He'd walk around chewing on his lemons while he was doing this. I mean, everybody's got a secret sauce, and that was Joey Ramone's. We worked almost 2 weeks on the song. We recorded at Sigma Sound in New York City. At the end, we worked all through the day and all through the next night. We finished overdubbing at about 5 or 6 in the morning. We were trying to beat the clock because I had parked my car, a Lotus, on 53rd Street, 53rd and 3rd. We were rushing to finish so that they wouldn't tow my car. As it turns out, the tow got card. The car got towed, but the mix sounded great, and that's what And that is what is most important, right? I think we spent about twice as much on this song as we'd spent on the Ramones' entire first album. The entire first album of the Ramones was recorded for about $6,000. So this single song cost $12,000. But look at what the investment yielded. I'd say it was totally worth it. Roderick Edward Legs McNeil. Legs McNeil. We know Legs well. Journalist and author of PKM, one of my favorite friggin' rock and roll books. I think Dee Dee did a great job on the song, says Legs. Pet Sematary is one of the darker King books. The kid coming back is kind of creepy. Are you sure, Legs? Not that anything else Stephen King wrote is not creepy. The thing with the children really got to me, though. Yeah. Dee Dee seemed like he was always writing. The problem with Dee Dee was that he was not really that great of a singer. So it needed Joey to make it come alive. When he played his demos, it was Dee Dee's voice kind of squawking. So there's some demo floating around somewhere. I wonder if it's on YouTube. I bet you it's not. There's some demo of Dee Dee singing on a cassette. I have to imagine that it's somewhere right now and that it's singing. Let's see. Dee Dee Ramone Pet Sematary. Let's see if it comes up. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be rad? Well, there's him singing it in the year 2000. Maybe we have to put demo. Demo. Nope. However, this video that we're currently live streaming right now did pull up. Interesting. All right, so there's nothing there. Daniel Ray says, a lot of what the Ramones sang was silly. Pet Sematary didn't seem any sillier than Rat Boy or any of these other crazy songs. That's true. That's very, very true. I thought it was a pretty strong song for the Ramones. They played it well live. They played it a little heavier live. The crowd always liked it. Bouvier. It was the most successful commercial Ramones song ever released. It went to number 4 in the modern rock charts. Really cool. Lambert says, I really like the Ramones vibe. I like putting that vibe in the movie. I think that using the music as a counterpart is so much more effective than using it to Mickey Mouse the action that is going on the screen. The subtext of Pet Sematary is that it's a really dark party. It's a dark party with the afterlife. The end where Rachel comes back with one shoe and her face eaten off and the bugs coming out of her ears, and Lewis is really glad to see her. I mean, that's a dark party. It is really dark. Most really good horror films all have a deep vein of dark humor running through them. That is true. You need that. You need people to be able to laugh, not laugh hysterically, not laugh all the time. And again, we've talked very recently about the sort of parallel of comedy and horror. There need to be those moments where you see the ridiculousness of the story to keep you from being depressed and unpleasantly stimulated. Bill Fishman, director of the Pet Sematary music video. I had done a lot of the Ramones videos. I did Something to Believe In. I did Sedated. I did 4 or 5 of them. I love those guys. I came up with the idea of having the band lowered into a grave in the Pet Sematary music video. The one we found was up in Terrytown in the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. So this is, again, this cemetery is very close to me, and I love the cemetery, and it's known as the Old Dutch Cemetery, and this is the cemetery that's from the story, the Washington Irving Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's right there at the base of the cemetery is the place where the bridge was written about. The covered bridge doesn't exist. It never existed to begin with, but the location, the inspiration, it's right there. It's right next to the cemetery. Everyone was really scared that the Headless Horseman was going to come by. It was really creepy and a really freezing cold night. I mean, you can kind of tell where they are. You can look, it looks familiar, but like, I can't, like, when I go up there, I'm always thinking about that. I'm like, always looking like, where exactly were the Ramones? Like, I want to like do like a shot for shot comparison. And I never quite get the exact angle right. I kind of got a general sense of where the area of those, you look at some of the tombstones, you can kind of tell. It was really creepy. And if you really want to see what more of the cemetery, go on my channel. I made a film called Romeo's Distress, my first feature-length film, and watch the first, 5-10 minutes, and you'll see that cemetery is in there. It's some black and white, got some beautiful photography of the tombstones in there, and check it out. It was really creepy and really freezing cold, and everyone drove up in the middle of the night to do this. The steam coming out of their mouths is real. It was some pretty crazy shit. And you look, I think Dee Dee's wearing leather gloves in the video, and they've talked about their hands being really cold. We ended up having to bring a friend of mine from the Bronx who was a contractor. He brought in a backhoe to the grave to excavate. That's crazy. They actually excavated. I mean, it looks like it in the video. We had to build an actual platform that could be lowered with a man lift that could support the band. And therefore, the grave had to be super deep because those man lifts are at least 5 or 6 feet high. So the grave had to be another 6 to 8 feet deep. That was quite an engineering feat. It most certainly is. And as someone who, the whole ending of my movie takes place in a cemetery with an open grave. It really is, when you don't have money and don't have resources, it's very hard to fake that sort of stuff. It really is. It's much like the Ramones songwriting. It's deceptively simple, but not at all. One of the things that was actually scary was that there was no way to get a remote to operate the lift from the outside of the grave. So my friend had to actually be inside of the grave and operate it at the same time. Once we had the band and all the equipment on the man lift, it could have collapsed on him in the grave and actually really buried our crew. It almost fell over, so we almost lost the band and the crew on that video. Sounds very dangerous. There were all kinds of guests there that the band had invited up. We mentioned Debbie Harry and the Dead Boys and all kinds of people. We had a mosh pit around the cemetery. Ray says, I was out there at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery for the music video shoot. It was great. It was like a big party. You have to look closely and pause it a couple of times to see me, but I'm wearing an Abraham Lincoln hat and a white medical trench coat, and I'm running around with a medical device in my hand. I guess I was a mad doctor. It was fun. It was cold, but it was a lot of fun. I think they just decided to have a party and invited all that. We've read this quote, but because everyone likes scary stuff, scary monster stuff. It was like Halloween, but it wasn't Halloween. So this is Messiah Sa, the grave digger at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Oh, cool. She actually interviewed one of the grave diggers that works up there. I've been working at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery for 34 years. That night was crowded. There were a lot of people there. They used the chapel. Okay, so they were by the chapel. The chapel is right by North Broadway, which is right by the road. They used the chapel because it was a cold night. That's a very old chapel. The chapel dates back to the 1600s. That cemetery began in 1609. It's one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States. I was there as assistants just in case an accident happened. I also dug the grave that the Ramones were buried in. I put the lift inside the grave and we prepared everything and they did their work. I'm not in the video. I stood away behind the bushes. They didn't let anyone approach them. The spot where we dug the grave is still available. Ha 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 ha. And that's it. That's it. That's all there is to it. So an interesting secret history about Pet Sematary. On Howard Stern's show in 91, the Ramones sang little pieces of a different version. Yeah, I don't want to be buried in an Iraq cemetery, probably because the Gulf War was going on, right? I would imagine. Angus says, I saw Dee Dee play live in Kansas City, Missouri. His voice was not the best. Still, it was the closest I ever got to seeing the Ramones. Hell, it's a hell of a lot closer than I ever got. I saw Daniel Ray and CJ Ramone do a set of Ramones songs at the Continental right on St. Mark Street, which was absolutely the Ramones neighborhood for sure. And, I guess that was kind of the closest thing I'll ever get to see of the Ramones. I think it might even be closer than seeing Marky play with those guys. I don't know. I've never, he's coming up. Actually, he's going to be playing in New York City. I don't think I'm going to go. I've never caught Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg. It just never interested me. And it never interested me. Like, I would love to see Marky I would be happy to watch Marky play the drums. But it's just I don't care about seeing those other three guys. I really don't. Even, whatever I felt about or feel about Michael Graves, even when Michael Graves was singing, no, I had never had any interest. I just never had any interest in that. So I was happy to have seen CJ and Daniel Ray do that set. It was great. It was really great. What else can I tell you? I just taped an episode of Pizza Punk with this incredible artist, Abby Ooze. If you don't know Abby Ooze, go seek out her music, search for it on YouTube. She's amazing. So that'll be coming up. That's a Pizza Punk episode. And then I'm doing another taping potentially this Sunday. This is a big fish. For some of you may not think this is a big fish, but for me, it's a big fish. And for those, it's from a band that we recently covered. And it's not, once it's in the can, I will say who it is. I don't want to jinx it because I don't know if it'll go down because there's still a couple of things up in the air. But tentatively this Sunday, I'll be taping that as well. So we'll see. So 2 really cool episodes of Pizza Punk coming up. More stuff coming up. I've got a lot of things to catch up on, and as it relates to this channel, gotta get those t-shirts announced and whatnot. I've not forgotten about that. I swear I have not. I just, again, the anxiety of going into my emails and creating a spreadsheet and all that stuff. Ugh, I hate doing that shit. All right, but it's gonna happen. So, thank you for joining me tonight. Peace, hair grease, you know all the rest. We'll see you next time with another great show. Goodbye. I don't want to be buried